Let me ask you a question. What's the most niche form of horror? If you answered found footage, you would be close, but not correct. The correct answer, analog horror. A form of horror that attempts to replicate analog television with visual glitches, joining static, and the best film grain you've ever seen. Although niche, analog horror has taken certain corners of the internet by their necks, and is definitely the most accessible form of horror out there. But there is a roaming question that has remained stagnant in the analog horror medium. Who did it first? Or more specifically, who did it first and best? In this video, we will talk about where analog horror came from, what it is, who was the first one to do it right, and what happened because of this. This is the beginnings of analog horror. Who did it first? Analog horror is a subgenre of found footage that doesn't often include any form of real filmmaking and implores to make editing the primary form of storytelling. More often than not, the horror perceived is in the visuals, such as the devastation on society, a scary monster, or text on the screen telling you what's happened. It's also worth noting that analog horror is also a common descendant to creepypastas, a form of horror derived from internet horror stories told through a novel or tale as if it was a campfire story. A good example of a creepypasta would be Slenderman. Heard of him? Whether you have or haven't, Slenderman has inspired horror on the internet. With found footage and creepypasta ancestors, analog horror was bound to have certain qualities that made it special. The first ever documented analog horror was known as Stephen Chamberlain's No Through Road, a British found footage horror series that consisted of a couple of teenagers trapped in a sort of time loop on a county road near a place called Broomhall Farm. While in this time loop, they're being pursued by a man in a white mask, black trench coat, and a fedora. Why is it considered an analog horror despite it being primarily found footage? Because it laid the foundational work for analog horror to thrive and establish certain tropes in the genre, like near constant glitch effects. I have watched the series myself while researching for this video, and honestly, it's actually pretty good, and is just made by a couple of teens who wanted to make a fun horror film. Except, they knocked it out of the park, and it absolutely deserves the title of being the godfather of analog horror. This series garnered a very limited amount of attention, but it ended up inspiring some of the most beloved derivative works the genre had to offer. And it all started with the one that would light the fire for analog horror, with the creation of the first ever analog horror series on YouTube was CHSS, an analog horror series created by an individual known as Turkey Lennon III, a Singaporean YouTuber who founded CHSS alongside his own Slenderman mythos. The series consists of around 50 episodes that take place in the United States, and it all centers around a plot of the US government wellness program that is covering up many forms of shady government things, and contains unique ways in which information is disseminated throughout each episode. It contains decent editing, a somewhat followable narrative, and it keeps the title of being the first true one to ever do it. CHSS also doubles as an altered reality game, ARG, media where following links outside of the series leads you to bonus bits of information about the topic. CHSS's ARG consisted of a couple of cryptic links to other websites, a Twitter account that tweeted messages as episodes came out, and it all came back around to the series in the end. With all this content, you would assume it'd be good. Well, I personally think it's mid. I guess with that logic, it's hard to judge it with criteria that didn't exist back then. Then again, just because someone did it first doesn't mean they did it best. Deep in the shadows, a new analog horror series was being brewed by someone else. Alone, Chris Straub was hard at work with something new, something fresh, something that would revolutionize the genre forever. On October 26th, 2015, he created Local 58 almost immediately took off and is widely regarded as the best and first analog horror. It was created by Chris Straub as a side project while he worked on his comic series, Chainsaw Suit. The videos portray a television station known as Local 58 in Mason County, West Virginia. The series goes into varying themes as it follows a more anthological approach to analog horror rather than CHSS, which was more chronological. Local 58 consists of 12 episodes, all talking about something different, yet connecting each in some way. The series contains themes of cosmic horror, sci-fi, cryptid sightings, cartoon horror, government secrecy, whatever you think of, Local 58 did it. Local 58 also delved down the ARG path, but it was handled way better. As one, it's still accessible to this day, and two, it's well made and paints a wider narrative to the Local 58 anthology. If you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description for you to check it out. Watch Local 58 first, however, as context is key. So, all in all, is Local 58 good? In my opinion, and many others, yes. The pacing on the episodes are solid, the themes expressed are well done and done first too, and it even popularized and created many analog horror tropes that we know and love today. Like, you know the emergency alert system trope seen in many analog horrors? Local 58 was the one to truly popularize the trope in the genre with their episode called Weather Service. Local 58 also had phenomenal writing, as some of the lines in the episodes made me pause and think about them for a second. For example, the scene in Contingency, where there is a broadcasted message from the President of the United States urging citizens to commit suicide. Text on the bottom states, "This message will repeat until there are none left to read it." Or even in their episode Skywatching, where the videographer points the camera at the moon and text on the screen states, "His throne." Those lines genuinely made me think about what I was watching and think in a third dimension. I would say my only problem with Local 58 is that they never drop anymore. The last time they released an episode was around a year ago, and it's only episode 1 of season 3. For the record, the first episode was released in 2015, but is it really a complaint to say my only problem with this series is that there isn't more of it? If anything, that's a boon to the series in general. With the influence Local 58 had on the internet, Chris Straub managed to inspire every artist and editor in the space to make their own works in inspiration of Local 58. This led to analog horror series like Vita Carnis, Gemini Home Entertainment, The Smile Tapes, and even the Mandela Catalogue, just to name a few. All of these and more we will cover in the future, but for now, they're the outcomes of Local 58's influence. That is how analog horror started. We covered the beginning, the first of the first, the best of the first, sorry CHSS, and what spawned from it. This niche genre of amateur editing and varying quality for stories allows it for it to be a genre for everyone. For the most part, anyone could do analog horror. With the right software, writing, materials, heck, even you watching could create something just as good with time. To put simply, it's great to see how we got to the point where an analog horror can be just as good, if not better, than a Hollywood movie with a budget. That being said, this is Ben with Atlas Mune, signing off.
You're not pronouncing contingency right. You need a contingency.
Contingency.
Look at me. Contingency.
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 It doesn't even sound like a word anymore.